The Philadelphia Eagles and the Dallas Cowboys had a great but towards the end sloppy game to start the 2025 season. And while it did get sloppy towards the end, there were only 3 points scored in the second half of this game. Early, it was a pretty incredible matchup to watch. Dallas, we knew coming into this year with the departure of Micah Parsons, this needed to be a offense that was firing on all cylinders, and they scored 20 points in the first half. I think if there was more time on their last drive of the first half where they had to settle for a field goal, they only had 51 seconds to really do it. So I think this was a great showing from them in the first half. But then you look at quarters 3 and 4, I think after that lightning delay, especially for Philadelphia, I think there was a momentum zap for these guys. There was really not a lot of things going right for either of these offenses. And even though that's the case for Philadelphia, it rings more true for them because that weather delay happened right after the fumble from Miles Sanders in the third quarter. And it's interesting, but that's the same drive where Miles Sanders has a 50-yard run to get the Cowboys into the red zone, into the best scoring position they've had in the second half, and then he fumbles. But again, Philly goes 3 and out after that fumble that they recover. It was right after the weather delay. And these teams basically exchanged punts for the next 30 to 45 minutes. Philly had one drive, an 11-play drive in the fourth quarter that spanned almost 7.5 minutes, took up almost a whole half of a quarter on one drive, and they had a few tush pushes that they were able to succeed on. They had a couple of big plays from Jalen Hurts throughout the entire night with his legs. He had the 2 touchdowns on the ground, but there were countless first downs that Jalen Hurts picked up on the ground. And running the ball for Philly, again, in the second half, it wasn't great, but as a total, this team ran for over 150 yards. Both Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley went over 60. A.J. Dillon and Will Shipley in their backup duties had solid plays. But where I think this team really stepped up was on the defensive side of the ball in the second half. This team doesn't win if the defense plays any worse than the outstanding performance they put up in the second half. I mean, they were basically perfect. The only things that you could say you would want to be better is Quinyon Mitchell has that interception in one of the final plays of the drive. Especially because that same drive, Dallas had a chance. CeeDee Lamb, if he comes down with that diving catch on fourth down to end the drive, or even if earlier in the drive he doesn't drop another pass. I mean, CeeDee Lamb early in this game was looking like the best receiver in the NFL. He was looking like he was making a great case. And statistically, he still had a pretty good game. 7 receptions for 110 yards on 13 targets. But that could have been 10 catches for 170, 180 yards, and possibly a touchdown if he comes down with those 3 grabs that he did not convert on. And again, if those few plays happen, Dallas might be coming away from this game as the only 1-0 team currently standing. Now, Philly had a lot going wrong for them in the first half. They started the game on kickoff, losing possibly their starting fullback and depth guy at linebacker. They lost him just to start the game, so that probably didn't feel good. And then Jalen Carter, although there is a little bit of controversy with him and Dak Prescott, we found out during the weather delay that Dak Prescott might have rage baited Jalen Carter a little bit. Jalen Carter gets ejected from the game before the defense plays a single snap. And because of the penalty yardage and because of the newfound fact that the Cowboys were able to run at the Eagles without their main guy on the interior, in the first half, their running game was pretty good. Javonte Williams had 2 touchdowns in his debut game for the Dallas Cowboys in the first half. And Dak Prescott to CeeDee Lamb was working a lot early in this game. They were getting down the field, and when they got into the red zone, they relied on that running game with Javonte Williams to get them in the end zone. Philly just also didn't look great in their corner room, and this is going to be something to kind of look at for the entire season because Adoree Jackson is going to be possibly one of the most targeted cornerbacks in the entire NFL, especially if, performances like tonight where he's getting beat. There was a 3rd and 1 early in the second half, I believe, where Dak Prescott was in the shotgun in an empty set on a 3rd and 1, and Adoree Jackson was 8 to 9 yards off of CeeDee Lamb. And that's just that never is going to stop the opposing offense from converting. And, I felt like play after play, either Adoree Jackson or Quinyon Mitchell early in the game, there was either a penalty or there was a big play opportunity for Dallas. And I think the difference between these two teams tonight is in the first half, Dallas was converting on their big play opportunities. In the second half, they weren't. They had countless drops from not only CeeDee Lamb, there was a potential touchdown from Jake Ferguson in the end zone, even though that play did get penalized from a Reed Blankenship quote-unquote unnecessary roughness penalty. But again, the overall story for Dallas after this game is if they would have actually converted on some of their bigger opportunities, if Miles Sanders doesn't fumble away a red zone opportunity, if CeeDee Lamb comes down with those 3 catches, if, a couple of things just go right for Dallas, we're looking at them as the winning team tonight. With tonight's game being on Thursday, both of these teams get a pretty lengthy, not really bye week, but they have a long time before their next game. Each of these teams are off for 10 days before their next game. Both of these teams have pretty big matchups where Dallas hosts the New York Giants and Philly goes to Kansas City. And I think both of these teams are trending in the right direction. Obviously, Philly winning the game, but Dallas proved that they're not a bad team, especially offensively. This is a team that can compete. Defensively, they limited Philly's ability to have consistent plays. Early in the game, they were getting up and down the field, but I felt like they were able to get after the run. Saquon Barkley ran for 3.3 yards per carry. And where they were killed early in the game was with Jalen Hurts' legs. He wasn't really just putting the ball consistently down the field. He had one big play to Jahan Dotson, but other than that, not a single completion over 10 yards. And Philly, they lost Landon Dickerson after the weather delay. That could be something that hurt their running game. But they just didn't look like they had the usual dominance in the running game. Give credit to Dallas. But again, I think the bigger story is Philly not performing at the expectation that we're used to. Overall, this was a pretty good game. This was a pretty good way to start the 2025 season. As of the time of recording this, tomorrow we have a pretty good game as well between Kansas City and the LA Chargers. And I'll probably be back with another video about that game the next day. So I'll see you in that video.